Hello, Devon Middle School math students. My name is Mr. Ingram. I'm a math teacher up here at Leo Hayes. One of the math teachers there at Devon Middle, Mrs. Manzer, has asked me to do a quick video answering some of the questions that she and you may have had about transitioning from middle school math up to high school math. So let's take a minute and just learn a little bit about what it's like having math class at high school level. So the first and most obvious question is, what does a classroom look like? And honestly, there's not much difference from what you're used to. There's desks, there's windows, there's a smart board. Depending on the teacher, it may be tidy, organized, or unorganized. Desks might be in groups to form a table. They might be in neat and tidy little rows and columns, the way I prefer it for now. But overall, it's very much the same. Nothing that you haven't seen before in the last 8 years that you've been in school. Side note, Mrs. Manzer, I'm sorry that you're currently being represented by a granny in a cut-off lightning bolt shirt. I didn't have a lot of stock options in the icons available, so, you work with what you got. And another question is, what are the homework expectations? Honestly, homework expectations depends largely on the teacher. I personally just don't do homework. I have found that it's just creating a lot of extra work for everyone. So homework for me is kind of my philosophy is if it can't be done in class, if there's not sufficient time in class to do it, then I'm not going to expect to do it outside of class. And there are exceptions to this, but overall, my students wouldn't see a lot of assignments that they take home. Okay, next. If you could pick any 3 essential skills for your students to have mastered before entering grade 9, what would they be? What an excellent question. 3 skills. The first one is the easiest thing in the world to answer. If there is one skill that every student must have mastered to be successful in their future of math, that is what you may call either your multiplication tables, your times tables, or what I call math facts. So it's more than just your times tables, because I don't want you to just memorize the times tables from 1 to 12, although that is much better than nothing. But there's a relationship between 3 numbers, and that is the relationship that I need you to understand and be able to recall instantly. For example, a math fact is something like this. 3 multiplied by 4 gives you 12. Now, in this triangle, a math fact triangle, some of them call them a fact family, there are actually 4 different things happening here. There are 4 operations and their solutions happening. One of them is what I just said, 3 times 4 equals 12. Another one, 4 times 3 equals 12. But you can also go backwards this way, right? You could also say that 12 divided by 3 gives you 4. So that's another one. 12 divided by 3 gives you that missing 4. Or you could go the other way. 12 divided by 4 equals 3. So ideally, you know your math fact, you know your times tables, you know that 3 times 4 equals 12. But hopefully, if you know this one thing, it means you actually know 4 things. And that is the single most important skill to have to be successful in mathematics. So I don't know if you want to pause the video or just kind of have a quick look at this, but if I wrote down a 7 and a 6, you should hopefully be able to instantly fill in this top triangle, and you should be able to figure out all 4 of the operations that happen within that math fact. And conversely, if I put something like a 20 and a 5, you should be able to fill in this missing space and be able to tell me all 4 math facts that happen with that fact family. So that is by far the most important thing. The second most important thing is actually not necessarily a math skill. First one is math fact knowledge, but the second one is more of a life skill or a character trait. Something that you would need to work on is resiliency and diligence. So I have just a small idea of what it's like to be a teenager these days, which is you have got the most amazing entertainment that is custom to your desires and what you find funny and interesting in your hand 24/7 in the form of a cell phone. Is your thing horseback riding fails? It's right there. Maybe your thing is people drinking a gallon of milk and vomiting all over. It's right there. And so that is hard to compete with. Why would I sit and struggle through a math problem when I can have the thing right here that I would be much more interested in? So developing the ability to say, no, I'm determined that I want to get this answer. When you get it wrong the first time, not just going, this is easier, right? working towards getting the correct answer is actually a skill. It's a character trait that we need to develop, and that is going to serve you not only in math class, but in life. So the second most important skill is to develop resiliency and diligence to try again. When you fail, try again, keep listening, keep working at it instead of taking the easy route out and just daydreaming or focusing on something else. And the third most important skill, you might have guessed it, is fractions. Your knowledge of fractions, what they are specifically, and then how to work with them even better, icing on the cake. So if your teacher's the type to pause the video and have a discussion, now might be an interesting time to answer this question as a class. If I were to come up to you and ask you, what is a fraction? Could you give me a satisfactory response? Are you going to say something like, it's a number over another number? Well, that's kind of what it looks like, but what is it? And if you wanted to pause the video, now might be a good time to talk about what is a fraction. Do students actually know what a fraction is? So when I teach fractions, I teach it 3 different ways. The first definition of a fraction I give is that fractions are just numbers. Every fraction that you could possibly fathom would fall on a number line. Like if this was 0 and this was the number 1 and this was the number 2, I would like to think that most of you would know where the fraction 1/2 would go, right? It would go directly in between 0 and 1. That's 1/2. But what if I told you 3/2? Would you know where to place that? 3 over 2? Well, it's just a number. It's nothing to be intimidated by. It falls on the number line. This is 1/2. The number 1 could also be written as 2/2. And then this one right here would be 3/2. So it's actually a little more intuitive than you may think. Fractions are all just numbers. The next way I teach fractions, the second definition I give my students, is they're pieces of a whole. And I think this is probably the most common one and the most helpful one. So what does that mean, pieces of a whole? Well, let's take that same example, 1/2. 1/2 is on the number line right here, but 1/2 is also pieces of a whole. The top number is the number you have, and the bottom number is the number in a whole. So what does that mean? Well, let's take a pizza. Here's a pizza, one whole pizza. The bottom number is how many pieces the pizza has been cut into. The whole pizza has been cut into 2 pieces like this, okay? And how many of those pieces do we have? We have 1 of them. So this is how we would represent pieces of a whole, 1/2. We have 1 piece out of a total of 2 pieces to make up the whole. And the last definition I give to my students is that fractions are division statements. So what does that mean? It's a little more helpful for improper fractions when you have a bigger number on top, but 10 over 5, it's 10 divided by 5 is 2. Now this gets a little bit harder when you have something like 3 over 2. How many 2's fit into 3? Well, the answer would be 1 entire 2 fits into 3, and then another half of 2. So 3 divided by 2 is 1.5 or 1.5, however you want to think about it. Next question is, why is it important to show your work when solving multi-step math problems? All right, I've actually got an example for this. So when I was your age, my little brother and I got a Nintendo Wii for Christmas, and it came with the game Smash Bros. I think like Super Smash Brothers Brawl. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Smash. Surely you have. But we would play together, and I was that really annoying older brother who would just spam the same thing over and over. So there was this character in Smash Brothers Brawl that could shoot like a bow and arrow, like a blue arrow. And I would just do that constantly. I'd stand on one end of the screen and just pew, 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 kind of kill my brother slowly, which obviously he hated. But I just did that over and over, and I would keep winning, keep winning, keep winning. So this went on for about a week. And what I didn't realize is that Nathan was actually playing, my little brother, he was playing a lot more in his spare time than I was. And so I had this one skill, right? I had one skill. I would just keep bam, 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 just shooting that stupid pew, 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 pew arrow constantly. But after about a week, he learned how to like shield and defend against it. So my one skill was no longer working. I had to learn other skills to accomplish the same goal of winning. And I never did. He was always better than me after that because I only developed one aspect of my game. If I wrote this equation on the board, x plus 2 equals 8. I'm assuming that almost everyone in the classroom watching that right now could solve X. Teacher, if you want to pause the video and just ask, I'm sure they'll all get it. But the answer to this is, of course, X equals 6. Now, just by looking at that and solving our final answer, this is a skill called inspection. So you all just looked at that and you knew the answer. You inspected the elements on the page and you realized X must be 6 logically. And I have students, because I've taught grade 7 through 10 math for like a decade. So I know that there are students in grade 8 who they use this one skill, just like me, pew, 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 doing that same thing that works, it's working. They have that one skill of inspection and they'll solve things, they'll even do things like, 2x minus 4 equals 16. And they'll be able to, and again, if you want to pause this and try to figure out the value of X, feel free to do so. I'm going to give the answer right now. But I'll have students who will look at this and say, okay, if X, okay, all right, I think X must be 10. And this is all the work that I will see on their page. Now, they are correct. They have used a skill right here called inspection that will work for most questions up to the end of grade 8. Now, I want to see if you can do this question. So here is a question that I would give my grade 9s in their algebra unit. Solve the value of X. Now, I don't think that even I can look at this and inspect it and solve the value of X. There are 2 X's. There's one over here, one over here. At some point, we're going to need to take those X's and bring them together. It's too complicated. If in these questions, you have not practiced the skill, like for X plus 2 equals 8, if you never in your life have gone, okay, my goal is to isolate the unknown. I'm trying to get X by itself. So I need to remove the 2. How can I remove a positive 2? Well, I need to subtract 2. They cancel. Whatever I do to one side of an equation, I must do to the other. So if I subtract a 2 over here, I got to subtract 2 over here. Now I have a new equation. My new equation is X is equal to 8 minus 2. And now I can simplify the right side to be X equals 6. Now I know what it feels like is you just wasted a lot of time. That's not what happened. Over here, you're practicing pew, 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 pew. And over here, you're getting better to beat your older brother. You are practicing the skills that you will need to have in place to solve this problem. So that is why it's so important to show your work in everything that you do, because that's how math works. It builds on itself. And if you have mastered mathematics with just the simplest, quickest way of doing things, instead of the way that your teachers are asking you to do it, we're doing that for a reason. It's because we want you to be successful, not just now, but later. Not only with equations, but just with simplifying of expressions. Here are some BEDMAS operations. If you want to pause the video, try them, go for it. I think there are some grade 6, 7, 8 students who might be able to solve this problem. Most of you would be able to solve this one. So again, we got to learn to show our work. I teach my students to underline the highest priority thing. So in BEDMAS, any brackets? No. Exponents? No. Division, multiplication? Yes. So we underline what we need to do. And then that's all that we touch. We don't touch the 4 plus, we just make this 6, and our answer is 10. All right, now if you want to try this one, go for it. But this is a type of question that I would give my grade 9s and expect them to be able to just use their skills to logically go through it from the highest priority to lowest. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. We talked about 3 of, in my opinion, the most important things that you need to have equipped with you to be successful in grade 9 math. Number 1, you got to know your fact families, not only your times tables, but kind of the inverse, the division of all of those things. If you can recall quickly that 7 and 6 make a 42, 42 and 6, 42 divided by 6 leaves you with a 7, then that's a massively important skill. Having determination, diligence, and resiliency to try questions over and over until you get it is going to help you learn. It's going to help your brain develop so that you become better at mathematics. And lastly, for grade 5, 6, 7, and 8, that's when you're getting introduced to fractions. Don't be intimidated. Try to learn what they are. Try to remember a fraction isn't just a number written over a number. That's what it looks like. But what is a fraction? It's a representation of pieces of the whole. 2 over 10 means that the whole pizza was cut into 10 slices, but we only have 2 out of 10 slices. So if you come equipped with those 3 skills, you should do just fine in grade 9 and beyond mathematics. I hope you found this video helpful. I look forward to maybe meeting you someday and maybe even teaching some of you. Have fun at Devon Middle. Mrs. Manzer, thanks for the opportunity to make the video, and I'll see you all sometime. Bye-bye.